And just feel the in and out as you breathe. Feel whatever ground beneath you that roots you into your purpose, your ancestors at your back. And allow yourself to just be still for 1 second. And I invite you to be fully present in the space. Are we here? Yeah? Well, just a couple of opening things as we start. I like to do that because there's, in conferences like this, with this many people, we're in constant motion. We're trying to get all the things done that we need to get done, meet all the people we need to meet. And that's important. And it's also important to remember, one of my favorite sayings is, we're human beings, not human doings. And part of the system and how it wins is making us think our worth is solely in what we do versus in our inherent worth of who we are. All right, so just remembering that a little bit as we get into this space. So who here, yesterday there was a call from Alandria of, we all say we want to get free, but what does free really look like? Did anybody here get a sense today, in whatever way, that you had a little bit clearer of a peek of what free looks like for you and your communities? Anybody? Yeah? Zoom workshops and tracks. So I want to just give a thank you to some of the workshop presenters and track leaders. Okay, so we have, as we said yesterday, we're trying to make our space accessible. I believe our interpretation equipment, there's a little bit of a holdup, so we are going to do some consecutive interpretation right now.
Al parecer, como habíamos dicho ayer, nosotros queremos que nuestras reuniones sean inclusivas de todas las personas. En estos momentos estamos teniendo problema con el equipo de interpretación, entonces lo que vamos a hacer es una interpretación continua.
Alrighty, so we thank the workshop presenters and track coordinators. It's okay. You coming up top of there? Okay. Here we go. This is all emergent design and emergent support for each other, right? So, yeah, thank you to interpreter.
Okay, todo esto es preparado con emergencia y estamos todos ayudándonos el unos al otro. Aquí seguimos.
So we thanked our workshop presenters and our track coordinators. Remember yesterday, Aaron and Franchelle gave us a little bit of an insider look to Buffalo. So who got to meet Buffalo a little today?
Okay. Recuerden que ayer estuvimos hablando un poquito de todo lo que estaba pasando y Eric y Franchelle estaban hablando un poquito de lo que es el estado de Buffalo. ¿Quiénes de los que están aquí pudieron estar andando en el estado, conocer a Buffalo?
Excellent. So let's give it up for our shuttle drivers and our tour guides and everyone who are in the back of making those tours happen.
Un aplauso para las personas que manejaron y los que manejaron las guaguas también por el buen trabajo que hicieron.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're back on. Okay. So one of the things that we talked about last night was sovereignty, and a good friend of mine, Kriya Gomez in Oakland, raises 6 children and runs a school in Oakland, and she always talks about no one is coming for us, so how do we come for ourselves and each other? And as we were on that tour for Buffalo, at least I know in my tour, I saw how folks were coming for each other, right? And how we think about this sovereignty and how we put our hands into the things that we want for our people and not wait for anybody else. So who here did a little bit of that today and saw how you could do that more in your community? Yeah? A little bit? Who is ready to hear about how that looks like in other places on this earth? Yeah? Who's ready to hear some of that? And because not all of us had access to the tours, who's ready to hear how that's rooted in place here in Buffalo for how they're taking care of each other? Yeah. So that is what we are up to tonight with the charge of how do we risk together and how do we ask the hard questions of each other. So I'd like to invite up our first panel of the plenary, which is our international panel, who is going to blow your minds with what is happening in the rest of the world for how we can be together in this new economy. Let's give it up for them, please. Give them a lovely welcome.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Great. This is going to be a fantastic panel. We're going to hear about some fairly large-scale examples of new economy, solidarity economy, innovative practices from Quebec, from Italy, from El Salvador, and Cuba. And yeah, the idea is we will hear about what's happening. We'll hear about what are some of the critical factors that made these developments possible. What are some of the current struggles? And if we have time, one message to the U.S. audience. And we're going to be doing consecutive interpretations. So yeah, you're going to have to be a little bit patient. It'll slow us down a bit. I'm going to pass a mic, and people are going to just introduce themselves. I think that was done so that I wouldn't butcher people's names. So why don't you start?
I'm Nancy Neamtan from Quebec, Chantier de l'économie sociale.
Federica Bandini from Italy. I am a teacher in the University of Bologna.
I'm Roberto Lepre, but I'm just interpreter for Federica.
Buenas tardes, Oscar Recinos de El Salvador.
Good evening, everybody. Oscar Recinos Morales from Salvador.
Hello, I'm Rafael Betancourt from Cuba. I teach at the University of Havana, and I work in a project called Socially Responsible Enterprise and Local Development in Cuba, and I'm the Cuba coordinator for that project.
And I'm Emily Kawano. I'm the coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, and I'm also on the board of REPES, which is the Intercontinental Solidarity Economy Network. Okay, we have a pretty short amount of time, so we're going to try to hold fast to time limits. And we're going to start with a question of what's happening? What's your story? What's your example? So we're starting with Nancy.
Yeah, I have 6 minutes to resume 30 years of my life and to talk to you about a movement that is a growing movement for the transformation of our economic development model. Perhaps just a couple of words about Quebec, even though it's very close to you. It's important to know that Quebec is a small French-speaking nation within the Canadian Confederation of 8 million people. And to survive as a nation, we've had to develop a political culture of working collectively, of social dialogue that has made it perhaps a more favorable context to grow the social and solidarity economy movement, though there's been a lot of hard work and a lot of grassroots organizing to get where we are today, and we've still got a long way to go. Some examples that the largest financial institution in Quebec is a cooperative. The labor movement is at a 38% rate of organization of the labor force, and the social policy for women, for example, makes Quebec probably one of the places where women have the most equal rights of probably any place in the world. So we have lots to be proud of that's come out of a lot of struggle. I'm here to talk to you about the social economy movement, which I've had the privilege to be part of since it started at a grassroots level over 30 years ago. I was a community activist or social, community organizer working in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Canada, an old industrial area, working on trying to solve all the social problems that our community was facing, and realized with others that the problem was that the economic development model was creating constantly more poverty and marginalization, and if we didn't attack that issue head on and start developing an economy that worked for our community and benefited our community, that we would never solve the social problem. And that was the time, I'm talking about the early 80s with the Reagan, that was the beginning of Reaganism and Thatcherism, of what was called the trickle-down, still called the trickle-down effect, which was to say, take away all the barriers for private enterprise, they will create wealth, and the wealth will trickle down. Notice they never said it would flow down. Even in the best of times, it would trickle down. And of course, we looked at what was going on. We were 10 minutes away from downtown Montreal, and nothing was trickling down. And so we said, well, we've got to get involved in economic development for our citizens. We were, of course, crazy people at the time. One of the advantages of getting older is that 30 years later, the IMF and the OECD have said, what? Trickle-down effect has not worked. Never had so much wealth creation in the world today, and the gaps between the rich and the poor have never been so huge. So we got to go slower, yeah. So we, within the community movement and social movement, but also within the labor movement at that time, there were some major debates on what do we do about this? And the decision that was made collectively after much discussion was to say that we have to define ourselves as economic actors, and we have to reappropriate the economy and make it work for our community. And so that's what we started doing, and we just put our heads down and start to push forward. 6 minutes, I'm going to fast forward 33 years. And to say that today I have the privilege of working with an organization that is known, very widely known in Quebec, called the Chantier de l'économie sociale. Chantier means a working group, sort of, but it really means a construction site, literally, and we've kept that because that's what we feel we're doing, is constructing a new economy, a new democratic and inclusive economy. We are a national organization that brings together networks of cooperatives and nonprofit collectively owned enterprises, be they parent-controlled daycare, worker co-ops, housing co-ops, recycling, nonprofit recycling businesses, and so on. We also bring back together organizations working in rural and urban communities to revitalize communities for the benefit of their people, and social movements, the labor movement, the women's movement, community movements. I only have 2 minutes left, unbelievable. And the Shantier's mission is to promote and develop the social economy as part of a new economic development model. First Nations are also part of our structure, and to do that, I'm going to take a couple of minutes more. I'm sorry, I just can't get it all in. We've done a lot of things, but the main thing we've done is to figure out how we can create the conditions so that in communities across Quebec, no matter where you are, a First Nations community in an urban area, that you have the tools to be able to develop the kind of economy that is responding to the needs and aspirations of your community. It means creating a whole ecosystem, which we've done over the years and we're still working on, finance tools, training tools, research, knowledge transfer, commerce, getting out to markets, building our buying power, and to be able to let that happen, and it has had incredible results. But it's also, we worked on public policy to the extent that in 2013 we were able to win, and this was unanimously passed by our National Assembly, framework legislation that recognized that the social economy is an integral part of the socioeconomic infrastructure of Quebec. And from now on, public policy has to take into account collectively owned enterprises whose mission is not to make shareholders rich, but to make communities healthier and stronger and more sustainable. So I guess I got to stop there, except to say that we've worked internationally with a lot of you people out there, and I think that one of the key things for us has also been being part of an international movement, because we know that with the globalization of the economy, we're not going to create an utopia alone in our area. We have to all work together, and hopefully we can continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Really.
Federica.
Good afternoon. Ringrazio gli organizzatori per avermi invitato. Mi sono chiesta come mai mi avessero invitato. L'ho scoperto solo questa mattina e sono contenta. Secondo me avete fatto molto bene, perché rappresento un paese che è molto all'avanguardia su questo tema.
She was wondering why she was invited. She just realized that why she was invited this morning, but she thinks that you did a good thing to invite her, because she represents a country, being Italy, and a region, being Emilia-Romagna, that is one of the most active regions in Italy about social companies.
Quest'anno il mio paese, con il nuovo Prime Minister, ha fatto una nuova legge sull'impresa sociale, dopo 20 anni che non veniva realizzata nessuna legge su questo tema.
After 20 years in Italy, there's a new law about social companies that's been just established right now. And so there is a lot of expectation about the growth of social company starting last year.
Ho capito perché mi avete invitato perché a Forlì, che è una sede dell'Università di Bologna, c'è un corso sul management dell'economia sociale e Forlì è la città dove è nata l'impresa sociale in Italia. La nostra aula magna è intestata al primo cooperatore sociale in Italia e credo che sia una delle poche università di economia al mondo che ha l'aula magna intestata a un cooperatore sociale.
The town of Forlì, which is near Bologna, which is in Emilia-Romagna in Italy, like the center north part of Italy, has a lecture hall, which is the main hall that's been entitled to the founder of the first social cooperative in Italy, and which is a big thing because we think it's not common that a main hall of a university can be, okay, can you hear me better now? I'm sorry. Can be entitled to a social company entrepreneur.
An economic university.
Right, I'm sorry.
L'Emilia Romagna è anche la patria degli migliori asili nido, dicono in Italia e al mondo. Scusa, sorry. Emilia, I'm not able.
Emilia-Romagna is where they say they're the best kindergarten in the world.
And they are, sono cooperative sociali.
And those kindergarten are social companies, so social cooperatives.
Yes, it's really different. Vorrei presentarvi alcuni numeri della mia regione e del caso appunto dell'Emilia Romagna per quanto riguarda la cooperazione sociale. L'85% dei cooperatori sociali, dei lavoratori delle cooperative sociali hanno dei contratti a tempo indeterminato, il che significa che possono fare progetti per il futuro e possono fare acquisti, possono pagare interessi alle banche, possono costruire il loro futuro.
These are a couple of slides of data which are in English, so very easily understandable. It's just numbers, but it's indicative that 85% of employees has a permanent contract, so they can plan their future in the social cooperatives.
Il 22% sono lavoratori stranieri e questo significa essere molto inclusivi verso le persone che vengono, in questo momento c'è una grande immigrazione dal paese del Nord Africa e vengono coinvolti nelle cooperative sociali.
Another important data is that 22% of the social cooperative workers are foreign, and this is very important for the integration of people.
From North Africa.
From North Africa.
Il 33% hanno dei contratti part-time, il che significa consentire loro di mantenere l'equilibrio work and life balance nelle diverse fasi di vita.
33% of these employees have part-time jobs in the cooperatives, which means that they can have a good balance between work and life.
In Italia c'è anche il fenomeno del workers buyout cooperativo. Ci sono state 56 nuove COP solo in Emilia-Romagna negli ultimi 5 anni grazie al fenomeno del workers buyout cooperativo, cioè si sono salvate imprese trasformandole in cooperative.
Another important point is the fact that 56 new cooperatives in Emilia-Romagna were born by buying out workforce, which means that they saved something like 1,200 jobs by the creation of these cooperatives.
In Italia in Emilia-Romagna ci sono 4.500.000 abitanti su un totale di 56 milioni in Italia e abbiamo 800 cooperative di lavoratori e 800 cooperative sociali.
The country of Italy has 56 million people, 4,500,000 people live and work in Emilia-Romagna, and 800 cooperatives are present in Emilia-Romagna, which is a large
Worker
number.
Cooperatives
Worker cooperatives.
and 800 cooperative sociali.
So 800 social cooperatives and 800 worker cooperatives are in the territory of Emilia-Romagna altogether.
Okay, the last one.
This is the last slide.
Molto importante, per quanto riguarda l'income nelle cooperative, è cresciuto tra il 2008 e il 2014 del 3,6%, mentre nelle corporates è diminuito del meno 3,1%. Il lavoro nelle cooperative è aumentato del 9,4% e nelle cooperative nelle corporates del 3,3%.
This is a slide that shows the growth of income of cooperative versus corporates. The growth of income is 3.6% versus minus 3.1%, and the employees are grown by nearly 10% in the cooperatives as compared to 3.3% in the companies
Federica,
altogether, which is a big growth.
could you just quickly explain the difference between a worker co-op and a social co-op? And also, I just want to point out the time.
The most part of cooperative of a social enterprise in Italy are social cooperatives, because the new law about social enterprise is now. So we haven't really social enterprise. The social enterprise are cooperative, social cooperatives, okay? We don't call social enterprise the enterprise with corporate social responsibility. For us, social enterprise have a particular characteristic, like workers are the owner of the society, and so on, inclusion, link with the community, and so on. So, for instance, fino ad ora,
Until now,
the real social enterprise in Italy are cooperatives.
because of the new law that just started, so until now they're all.
Perhaps in the future we would have a new social enterprise different from social cooperatives, but in our country it's very strong, the culture on cooperatives.
Thank you. Thank you. Oscar?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Oscar Recinos, voy a hablar un poco de El Salvador, de la historia del cooperativismo en El Salvador, en un contexto
I thought he was going to finish the sentence. Good evening, everyone. My name is Oscar Morales from El Salvador. I'm going to talk about co-ops in my country in the context.
Ok, nosotros, mi organización nació en 1985 bajo un contexto de un conflicto armado, donde era un poco difícil desarrollar el cooperativismo, pero para nosotros la lucha primeramente fue defender la tierra, porque había una concentración de la tierra en aquellos años en 14 familias. Luego en los 80 hubo una reforma agraria que le facilitó a los colonos darle la tierra, pero como una medida.
I'm going to talk about the context in which the co-op was developed. It was developed in 1985 in a small town. It was about 14 families that were over there around the 80s. And all of them got together in the terms of the agrarian reform in the agriculture.
O sea que se desarrolló un movimiento cooperativo, pero no con el propósito de que las familias resolvieran su problema económico, sino con otros intereses de política, de geopolítica, podemos decir. Entonces, desde el Estado en los años 84, 87, se definieron leyes para terminar con las cooperativas porque el modelo allá era de colectivo en cuanto a la tenencia de la tierra, a diferencia de otras regiones del mundo.
Okay. And then over there we started to develop co-ops in terms of the economy, not in the common sense that everybody was doing it, but in terms of the economy, but for the entire community that we were having. And then we started to do, the community started to develop some other things.
Entonces un mecanismo para dividir era una ley de parte del Estado que obligaba a que se dividiera la tierra, y eso era para que después llegaban los compradores, acaparadores, y uno a uno ir comprando la tierra, y así se perdió mucha tierra.
The way they were doing it at that time is that they were dividing the land. They divided it in a one by one situation, and then at one point they were doing that because then at some point some others were buying the land.
Bueno, hay mucha historia, pero esa es una primera batalla, lograr sobrevivir ese proceso de tener la tierra, legalizarla.
That was a very long, that is another story, but it's a very, very long, and it was a long battle that we had to fight to finally legalize the land.
Después, como en ese periodo de la guerra las cooperativas quedaron endeudadas, hicimos otra lucha a partir de los acuerdos de paz del año 92, en el que pedimos una condonación de la deuda agraria y bancaria, que se nos condonó el 85%.
Then at that moment, after all that of buying the lands, all the co-ops, they were left behind with a huge debt that they have to pay. Then after that, we started to kind of ask if that debt could be some sort of forgiven.
Entonces, una primera batalla es lograr defender la tierra, la segunda es liberarla de las deudas, y luego el tercer proceso después es comenzar a producir en un ambiente ya relativamente más tranquilo, aunque...
Okay, so we had 3 battles that we had to do. First, it was to pay the debt, then the land, then the second one was to give it to the people so they can start producing, and then the final one to start growing and finally producing.
Entonces nuestro camino en el sistema cooperativo salvadoreño ha sido muy cuesta arriba, de lucha tras lucha, porque en mi país tener tierra es como la amenaza permanente de quererte despojar de la tierra. Entonces hemos pasado, muchas cooperativas se quedaron en el camino, pero los que logramos pasar estamos ahora en un ambiente diferente, donde generamos empleo a nuestras familias.
It has been difficult, you know, if you are in the business of the land, the growing farmers, that is a thing that is going up and down. But we have been able to do good and continue. Many co-ops, they were left behind, but some others we were able to survive and continue.
Porque para nosotros el éxito no solo es económico, porque muchas familias en mi país donde no tienen donde hacer su casa, acceder a unos metros de tierra ya es un triunfo. Y luego pasar a la parte más social, porque las cooperativas tenemos un enfoque solidario en el que tratamos de solucionar y buscar salida a todos los problemas.
You see, for us, the economy is not only to have something. It's a little bit more than that. It's to be able to socialize and to have a little bit more, not just a piece of the land.
Y hoy tenemos cooperativas que generan empleo a sus socios, se reparten excedentes. Hay muchas cosas que decir, pero con el tiempo que tenemos, Es bien ir salto por salto, pues no llevar el proceso, pero quiero decir que nuestra experiencia de trabajo para los pobres, la mejor opción que hay es organizarse en cooperativa o bajo otro modelo que genere ayuda mutua.
I want to say that the co-ops that we have right now, they have been able to succeed. They gave jobs to other workers, and they have been able to have good jobs, and that is something that we want to continue. We have a place of solidarity, something that we can continue giving on, and that is something that we want to continue developing.
En 30 segundos que me quedan voy a decir que también somos miembros de Vía Campesina Internacional, donde trabajamos temas de soberanía alimentaria como un derecho que tienen los pueblos a producir su propia comida y que no se ve la alimentación como mercancía, sino como un derecho que tiene la población para nutrirse, porque hay muchos alimentos en el mundo, pero millones de gente están pasando hambre y eso no puede seguir así. Entonces, en Vía Campesina decimos un eslogan, globalicemos la lucha, globalicemos la esperanza.
Okay. I also want to say with these 30 minutes that I have is that I also work in a co-op that is called Villa Campesina, that it works with people, and it sees food not only as an intake, but also as a way of living, and it contributes to a more global institution, international institution that goes on. Okay. And they also have a slogan that is called, "We need to globalize the fight, we need to globalize the hope."
Thank you, Oscar. And our last speaker is Rafael. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening. In 6 minutes, I'm going to try to convince you that Cuba's socialist economy is a new economy, the Cuba socialist economy is an alternative economy, and that in the terms of Latin America, it is a social and solidarity economy. Now, a lot of people have discounted Cuba as a dinosaur of Soviet times, and they have failed to see the process that we have undertaken in the last 10 and 15 years. Even within Cuba, these concepts of social and solidarity economy are not well accepted by the politicians. Even in academia, there's a lot of discussion because social and solidarity economy is a problem of the capitalist countries that have to develop within the context of neoliberal exclusion, and then the social and solidarity economy fills in this place. So it has nothing to do with us. We are a socialist country. On the other hand, the left is saying this socialism is old time, it has nothing to do with what we are building now. Well, they're both wrong. So I would argue, first of all, that a socialist economy is a social and solidarity economy scaled up at a national level. Because it's, first of all, what is it based on? It's based on an economy that puts people first and not profit. This is what we do in our country. The second is that the property that you try to control the property of the capitalist class. In Cuba, the major property is in the hands of the people, it's in the hands of the public. And I'm talking about 3/4 of all agricultural land. Some of it may be farmed by private farmers, by cooperatives, but 3/4 of the agricultural land is in public hands. It's the natural resources under, above, and below the earth, and the coastal systems, the coasts, the water resources, the main infrastructures, the main industries, and the basic services are maintained and supported in a public manner, accessible to all. The education and health, for example, comprise the public services some 37% of our GDP. And just education and health absorbs about 27% of our GDP. So we are sure security in terms of health and education. This is part of the goals of the new economy. This is part of the goals of the social and solidarity economy. Now, a lot of that is managed by the state, by state companies, and there we got a big issue. There we have a lot to resolve. There we have a lot to make more efficient. But listen, you can improve the management, but once the property is in private hands, you can only take it away by expropriation, and that's a battle, if not a war. So at least we have the first part of it. We have it in public hands. Secondly, we have a private economy and a cooperative economy that has been growing in response to the change in the model, the modernization of the model that has recognized that the state cannot be involved in everything and cannot solve all the problems. So there has been an increase in the private sector. Some 500,000 people formally have licenses to operate as private workers, plus another 600,000 farmers. So we're talking about, formally, about 30% of the labor force is private or cooperative. But it really, when you add the informal workers and the double counting, we're probably talking between about 40% of the labor force. And eventually will come down to about 50%. So we're talking about half of the labor force is going to be working in private or cooperative sectors. Now, the cooperatives are of two kinds. There is the agricultural cooperatives, which have existed for a very long time, and the new industry and service cooperatives, which are an experiment, and they're in the process of development. And it is something that we need to work on because we need to expand that sector. But it is there. We are working in that sector, and this prevents the concentration of wealth in private hands, because those private workers have small businesses and they have limited capacity to become large businesses. For example, home ownership. You can't own a home in Cuba because you're not a resident. And I can only own 2 homes, one principal home and one summer home or one vacation home. So that the ownership of, for example, land and buildings is restricted in favor of a public economy, a social economy, and without the growth of the private sector uncontrolled. And finally, what have we tried, what have we done from our project, Socially Responsible Enterprise and Local Development in Cuba? First of all, we want to put SSC in the map in Cuba, because we think it's important, because this economy is changing. It's a mixed economy where the share of the private sector is growing. So now it's more important than ever that we incorporate some of the goals and some of the struggles of the social and solidarity economy, because we are also facing the inequality that this marketization produces, and we're also facing grassroots demand for empowerment. And we're also trying to put Cuba on the global social and solidarity economy map, because we think we have a lot to contribute. Not only to learn, we have a lot to contribute. So I'm telling you, we're here. We're not absent.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafael. I want to make one comment. A clarification about social solidarity economy. Absolutely would not say socialism has nothing to do with us. We would say democratic forms of socialism, yeah, absolutely. So I just want to make that clear. All right, so everybody complained about it, but you did so well with your 6 minutes that I'm going to cut. If for the next round you have 3. So the next question is, what is or maybe a couple critical factors that enabled your success?
Well, the first thing is reappropriating the very sense of what the economy is. When I started as a community organizer, I really thought the economy was an exact science. I believed economists and the stock market, sort of that was where the economy happened. To realize that the economy is a Greek word that comes from order in the house, which is why women have to get involved in the economy, by the way. And so the whole issue of reappropriating the economy and taking it back as our own has been an important thing. We talk a lot about occupying Wall Street. Well, our vision has been, it's good to occupy Wall Street, but it's most important is to occupy the economy. And to do that, we've built we've worked on building an ecosystem of all the different kinds of tools that you need to develop the economy, but based on our values, controlled by the movement. So if you get into financial instruments, we're talking about a whole new economic logic and financial logic, and mainly controlled by those who are using the capital, because the problem with the system today is those who control capital decide how development takes place, and it should be us doing development that decide how capital is being used. Another thing that's been really important so this ecosystem has been really important. We've also, looked at government and seen how government has supported the private sector and multinationals, and all we say is, look, we want a level playing field. You're supporting them, you got to support us, but based on our reality. And look what we can do. We've always been very working towards government to show that we can create employment, create wealth, create economic activity by responding to the needs and aspirations of our communities, and the results are there, and every time we can show those results, we get stronger. We've also felt really strongly, and we've learned from the history of the old cooperative movement, of the importance of staying very close to social movements, because the cooperative movement started at the same time as the workers' movement as a reaction to capitalist exploitation, to defend workers with the labor unions and to control the means of production through cooperatives. And over the years, those large cooperatives really have lost their soul, and some have really no longer are cooperatives. So we felt really strongly of always working and integrating in our very governance structures social movements to be part of a movement for transformation. And the last thing is international learning. We have learned so much, a lot of you don't know that, but from experiences in the States, social cooperatives were an inspiration for us in our what we call solidarity cooperatives. And so building the international movement and learning, and I think in the social and solidarity economy, it's a place where the North has way more to learn from the South than vice versa. And so we've worked a lot on learning from our colleagues in Latin America, in Asia, and whatever. And I'm going to get my plug in if I still have 30 seconds, which is we've also, because we're a small place that has a pretty strong movement, we played a big role in building international workers and in convening people from across the world. We did it in 2011 with people from 63 countries, 1,500 people. We are convening in September, the beginning of September, the Global Social Economy Forum. We have already people from over 53 countries coming. So I hope that there's going to be a good delegation from the States. It's aimed also at local governments with mayors of some of the biggest cities in the world, Seoul, Paris, and so on. So hope we can see you, but building the international movement has been so important for us as well.
Thank you, Nancy. It's great.
Not only non solo le cooperative sociali sono social enterprise, ma anche una nuova forma di cooperative che abbiamo oggi in Italia, che si chiamano cooperative di comunità, e svelerò il segreto, dirò che cosa sono domani mattina durante il mio workshop.
There are not only the social cooperatives, but there's a new kind of cooperative new in Italy that are called community cooperatives. She's going to talk about the community cooperatives tomorrow morning in her speaking.
Il segreto del successo della cooperazione in Emilia-Romagna: la cittadinanza è molto attiva, si fa molto sentire, interviene molto, e molto spesso questi gruppi di cittadini formano non-profit organization che poi si trasformano in cooperazione sociale.
The secret of the success of cooperatives in Emilia-Romagna, which is the region of Italy, is the fact that the citizens are very active and very the solidarity is very active, and they get together for non-profit organization. They're full of initiatives, and that's the secret of the active population of that region.
Si trasformano in cooperative sociali e anche in cooperative di lavoro, i gruppi di cittadini.
So this can create social cooperatives and work cooperatives with all the citizens of that region.
Il secondo motivo è la grande imprenditorialità delle persone che vivono in Emilia-Romagna. In Emilia-Romagna è nata la Ferrari. Do you know Ferrari? Yeah. Or in Hebron, in Emilia-Romagna è nata la Ducati e così via.
Emilia-Romagna is full of entrepreneurs. Ferrari is the main example of that, but there's not only Ferrari, there's thousands of entrepreneurs like Ducati, and that's the secret of that region.
Quindi è una terra di imprenditori, di intrapresa, diciamo così. Un altro motivo è che la cooperazione in Italia nasce da 3 ideologie: il comunismo, il liberismo e l'ideologia cattolica.
The other reason of success is that everything starts from 3 concepts: the communism, the liberalism, and the Catholic, what was the third?
E questi 3 movimenti danno origine a 3 leghe delle cooperative: la Lega delle Cooperative, Conf Cooperative e AGC.
So there's 3 different kind of cooperatives according to those 3 different currents and concepts.
E in Emilia-Romagna sono forti tutti e 3,
And
liberale, comunista e
all 3
cattolica,
of them are very strong: liberal, communist, and Catholic.
in my country. E vivono insieme comunismo e cattolicesimo, comunismo e liberismo, e tutti costruiscono una società migliore.
So cooperative-wise, they all live together in symbiosis: communism, Catholicism, and liberalism. And it's a unique example of this region, in this region of Italy.
Recentemente abbiamo tentato di unire le 3 leghe nell'alleanza cooperativa italiana, ma ancora non ce l'abbiamo fatta.
They've been trying to unify the 3 cooperatives, but it's a very hard job until now because of different interests in the 3.
E così continuiamo a farci competizione e a crescere.
So there is a competition, but it's a correct competition, so they all grow because of that.
Thank you.
Para nosotros, los problemas que hemos tenido que enfrentar, creo que no es un tema que haya finalizado. Cada día estamos enfrentando diferentes dificultades.
So for us, the problems haven't ended, would not end. We still facing them.
Pero creo que temas como financiamiento ha sido siempre un aspecto que se ha tenido que luchar. Y los gobiernos sucesivos de El Salvador, hasta el año 2009, tenían casi cerradas las puertas para el movimiento cooperativo.
So finance have always been a struggle and a big fight. And the governments that have succeeded till 2009 have closed the doors to finance to us.
Es a partir del 2009 hacia acá que hay cierta apertura para recursos. Otro tema que ha sido importante, que hemos tenido que ir superando, es el tema de formación técnica, porque el contexto de nosotros es que muchos cooperativistas, algunos son analfabetas, no pueden leer, entonces se complica más para avanzar en procesos.
So since 2009 to now, we have resolved a little bit that problem. But the other problem we have is the technological. We need to advance with technologies, and for us it's hard because learning is an issue, because a lot of our co-op members are illiterate. So it is difficult.
Otro de las dificultades que hemos tenido que enfrentar es cómo organizar el mercado, porque eso está controlado por el sistema capitalista y entonces para la economía alternativa, para las cooperativas, hay que sortear o avanzar, pero cuesta mucho, porque es un tema que lo tienen controlado las grandes transnacionales.
So the market is organized in a capital domination. So capitalism is an issue. So if we are talking about this economy, it's hard because is an alternative, and the alternative is not there because capitalism.
Por ejemplo, ahora unas de nuestras cooperativas están participando en ventas hacia el Estado en un programa de semillas que se entregan hacia los productores, pero tuvimos mucha presión para que el Estado no le compre a las cooperativas y que no haya cierto mecanismo que faciliten eso, porque nosotros tenemos un tratado de libre comercio con el norte, con Estados Unidos, y ahí dice que están las reglas establecidas, que no se puede utilizar otros mecanismos.
So the other thing is we have trying to sell seeds to the state as producers, but it's a lot of pressure to not make that happen because to facilitate that mechanism has been an issue because they already have this free trade agreements with the North, and that has made it mandatory impossible.
Entonces, otro que hemos logrado posicionar es que las cooperativas y la organización es una alternativa para lograr mejorar la economía de las familias campesinas, y el gobierno actual tiene ya en su programa de gobierno ciertas acciones para fortalecer el movimiento cooperativo, que para nosotros eso es un triunfo porque en los gobiernos anteriores eso no existía, estaban como invisibilizadas el movimiento cooperativo agrícola, porque el financiero tiene otro tipo de desarrollo más avanzado.
So for us co-ops is organized, we have win, I feel, is a win, that we have a better economy in this government because co-ops are a better alternative for homes. And now the government is giving us a little bit more opportunity to have that happen. So, because we before have been invisibilized as a movement.
Thank you. Although, Oscar, you jumped ahead sort of to the next question, which is current struggle. So just to remind you, this question is what critical factors led to the success?
Okay, well, success is always relative, but I think that a critical factor for the success, I guess, at the national level, is that the Cuban Revolution never passed away, never transitioned to capitalism like so many others. We went through a very deep economic crisis in the 90s with the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we pulled up our britches and we survived. And that was the first success, survival under so many difficult circumstances, including a tightening of the US blockade against Cuba, which has hurt and continues to hurt because we still have very many limitations in our economy, given the impossibility of use of the US dollar and a lot of other constraints that are still in place with the US embargo. But at some point in time, I think the people reacted and the leadership heard the demands of the people. And these demands were, we want socialism, but we want a prosperous, sustainable, solidary, and democratic socialism. And basically this leadership, which is still the generation in power and it's giving up power in the next 5 years because of age and because generations pass, is guiding the country in that direction. It's not without resistance, it's not without struggle, not without a lot of pressures from inside and outside. But I think that the fact that we're still there, the revolution survived, and it's looking toward a new stage, a new moment in our history is a major factor. In case of our particular project, one of the factors, a main factor, was the fact that we were able to form an international consortium of people that were active in the social and solidarity economy in Latin America, in Canada, in Spain, in the US. And we have established through 9 years of work many exchanges, many opportunities to have events and to Cubans participate internationally and other international people participate in Cuba. And I think that cross-fertilization has helped us understand better our own needs and also the possibilities for the future.
Thank you. With time to spare. So the last question is, what are some of the current struggles that you face?
Well, the big challenge for us is really the question of scaling up, moving out of the margins into the mainstream so that the approach of the social and solidarity economy becomes a reflex in the economy as opposed to an exception. That means refusing because to a certain extent as we grow, some people, neoliberal idealists say, it's good what you're doing because basically you're picking up the pieces of the mess we've made. And we refuse to do that. Of course we're working with, picking up the pieces, but we want the whole cake. We don't want just pieces of what they've left behind. And we evaluate, and because of this framework legislation, we will have official statistics that we're about 10% of the economy. So we've got to grow. That means access to capital. That means getting into manufacturing more than we are, getting into natural resources. I could go on and on. The other major challenge is the question of we have to be able to articulate what is this new economic development model that we're talking about, putting all the pieces together. Our mission as a chantier, which brings together grassroots enterprises and communities and so on, and social movements and First Nations, is a new economic development model and contributing to by growing our enterprises and our initiatives and so on. But how is it all going to fit together? Because we feel that there are a lot of people out there, our population, our communities in Quebec and across the world, that know that this system, neoliberalism, and as I say, even the IMF is saying it, has not worked, is not working. We're going for an environmental disaster. I don't tell you all the problems with the existing system. So we have to work on articulating that in a clear way, concrete way, while we are building it at the same time. We're actually in the process of doing a 2-year tour of all the regions of Quebec, with our regional, because we have regional polls in all the regions, to discuss in open meetings with young people, with elected officials, about what that new development model would look like. And that's what we'd like to share with you as well as time goes by. The last thing, and this is something new that we hadn't seen before, and perhaps it's a sign of the strength of the movement as it grows, is this incredible capacity for capitalism to co-opt the vocabulary that we're using. Just think of Uber and the sharing economy. What are they sharing? Come on. So the idea is we've got to be able to show a real shared economy. Shared means collectively owned. And this whole idea of social enterprise and social entrepreneurs that are these individuals that are going to get rich, of course, because that's important, but they're going to change the world as well. Well, maybe they might, but we think that ownership matters, and that community and collective ownership is the basis on which we have to build a solidarity economy. So all this... So those are the challenges, and that's what we got to work on together.
Thank you.
Anche noi, anche in Italia, abbiamo in realtà molti difetti. E è chiaro che il capitale umano è la cosa più importante per sviluppare anche il fenomeno della cooperazione e dell'impresa sociale, quindi dobbiamo lavorare sul capitale umano.
Okay. Even in Italy we have a lot of problems, but the major one is what you would call the human capital, the human resources, education, which we have to work a lot about this concept.
Infatti la maggior parte delle persone pensa che abbiamo un solo modo per fare economia e non più modi di fare economia, un po' come diceva Nancy, e quindi noi dobbiamo insegnarlo fin dalle scuole.
So as Nancy was saying before, a lot of people think that there is just one way of doing economy, not different alternative ways and valid ways. So that's what we have to teach to people's education from high school on.
esiste una sorta di pensiero dominante, una sorta di isomorfismo culturale che porta solo a insegnare il profitto come obiettivo e non come mezzo.
In the generations of today, there is a sort of what it's called isomorphism, which is a concept of doing economy just for profit, which this is what we are working to try to modify.
Yes, I would like to explain that profit is the objective, and for cooperative is the instrument. Okay.
Okay. She was just saying that the concept is that to do economy for profit, this is a goal, but in the cooperative is a tool, it's not a goal.
Quindi dobbiamo spiegare una pluralità di modelli di business a tutti, appunto a tutti i livelli della formazione.
So the challenge is to explain that there are different models of business in the creation of an economy, not just one.
In particolare modelli che hanno come missione sia la sociale che l'economica e hanno una governance multi-stakeholdership e hanno molta attenzione all'accountability sia interna che esterna.
So in particular, the models that have a sustainability, which is not only economic but social sustainability, and a lot of attention for the social aspect of the people who are working in these cooperatives.
Multi-stakeholdership,
Right.
three-way, different mission, multi-stakeholdership and accountability interna ed esterna.
Okay, accountability internal to the cooperative.
E per fare questo stiamo cercando di organizzare con le più grosse centrali cooperative la formazione universitaria. Attualmente c'è solo il mio corso che si chiama Management and Social Economy in Italia, ma non a caso è in Emilia Romagna, ma abbiamo 3 master, uno a Trento, uno a Milano e uno a Bologna.
With this purpose, they have 3 master courses, which only three for the time being, which one is in Emilia Romagna, one is in Trento, another one is in Bologna, whose goal is to explain the diversity of the social economy concepts.
E noi dobbiamo cercare di aumentarli, di avere più enti che formano il capitale sociale delle nostre organizzazioni.
So they're fighting to increase the number of these courses to explain the concept and to
E in più dobbiamo
teach.
fare anche executive master per chi già lavora nella cooperazione, per spiegare un modo diverso di fare management.
Of course, even for people who already are working in cooperatives, we have to organize master courses to update their knowledge on the cooperative management.
Perché dobbiamo evitare che i manager che vengono dal for profit, e molto spesso capita che alcuni manager vengano presi dal for profit per la cooperazione, non cambino la nostra mission.
Sometimes happens that people are coming from a profit economy companies, and we have to be careful so that they don't change the mission of the cooperative by working there with that concept of usual concept of profit.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm going to ask the speakers to keep an eye on the timekeeper.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Bueno, nuestras luchas, en este minuto quiero hablar. Antes dije que soy miembro de Vía Campesina y tenemos unas luchas en Centroamérica, bueno, y en el mundo, porque Vía Campesina es un movimiento mundial que tiene una membresía de alrededor de 200 millones en el mundo. Estamos en todas las regiones prácticamente, pero en Centroamérica estamos luchando por el acceso a la tierra. Muchos campesinos están muriendo en Honduras porque no tienen tierra y están luchando por acceder a ella. Lo mismo pasa en Guatemala también, muchos hermanos campesinos han sido asesinados y son países que están criminalizando la lucha. También estamos luchando contra el extractivismo que está desplazando a las comunidades indígenas de sus territorios, y eso es una lucha de vía campesina internacional porque, como dije antes, hablamos de soberanía alimentaria, pero no puede haber soberanía alimentaria si no tenemos tierra, si no tenemos agua, si no tenemos financiamiento.
So as I said before, I'm part of Via Campesina, and we want to talk specifically about the fight that we have in Central America. We are, of course, a bigger international movement, and we are everywhere. We have more than 200 million members everywhere in the world, but we want to say that the fight we have right now is land access. And a lot of our people, peasants, are dying, but they're not just dying, they're being killed for the fight. Is a lot of people are dying again. They're killed because the fight for land access in Honduras and in Guatemala. Our brothers and sisters are being criminalized because they're part of a movement and their fight. We also are fighting against the extractive economy. We're always talking about food sovereignty, but we don't have access. So the access is access to land, access to money, and access to water.
Entonces, 30 segundos.
We have just 30
Estas
seconds.
luchas también 2 minutos. Por el cambio climático también, nosotros decimos que los campesinos pueden enfriar el planeta, porque los monocultivos generan una serie de problemas que estamos enfrentando ahora, muchos desplazados ambientales, porque se está priorizando, el capitalismo prioriza la acumulación de las ganancias, desplazando las comunidades, y son luchas que nosotros también tenemos, pero también estamos trabajando por la formación de activistas agroecológicos. Tenemos escuelas en Centroamérica, en Suramérica y en Asia y en Europa, donde estamos también formando activistas para un nuevo mundo. Esas son parte de nuestras luchas que estamos haciendo.
So we also fight against climate change. Our peasants also have been displaced, environmentally displaced. But we also do a lot of education. We have agroecologist schools and activism, and we have them in Central America and Asia and Europe.
Ok, entonces nuestra lucha alrededor de la parte económica pues es una diversidad, las cooperativas, pero hay comunidades indígenas que no les interesa las cooperativas, quieren autonomía de sus territorios, pues también es su derecho, y trabajamos porque esas comunidades tengan su propia forma de desarrollar su economía y respetar también esos derechos de estos pueblos originarios.
So yes, our fight is economic, but as co-ops, some of the peasants are indigenous, and we want to respect that. And we want to respect the ways of living, and by that we also want to respect the way their economies.
Thank you.
Being the last in the line has its problems, right? So I'm supposed to tell you the challenges in 3 minutes, and I'm going to tell you 7 challenges in 3 minutes, which is a challenge in itself. So the first challenge is we need to scale down state command over the public, the communal and the private property. So the state is too involved in determining forms of property that are not really public or that really belong. The decisions have to be made more at the local level. We need to scale up the social property, the co-ops, the associations. There's now more recognition of the properties of associations, religious organizations, NGOs, Cuban NGOs, and this is an opportunity to play a bigger role. And that is also scaling up civil society as a space to promote social change and to strengthen socialism. We have to scale up the mechanisms for participation, for citizen participation. They are too formal, they're too boxed in, and we need other, more creative. You guys are doing a lot of different things in this area that we could learn from. We need to scale up workers' democracy in the distribution of the surplus. This is a huge issue because socialism is not only defined by the ownership of the means of production and by the predominance of planning over the market, it's also defined by the distribution of the surplus. And that has to do with the producers playing a bigger role in the distribution of the surplus. We have to scale up transparency and accountability in a society that has used control of information in part as a national security issue. So when you go to the Canadian embassy and you ask for a list of the Canadian companies that operate in Cuba, the Canadians won't give it to you because they're afraid of US retaliation. And this is general because we have faced that situation, and the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability has sort of sneaked into that concept of national security. And finally, we have to scale up democratic socialism. We have to make Cuba even more social and more solidary than it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the speakers. And I really apologize. We do not have time for discussion and questions. I'm sorry that I had to be such an oppressor and take away your freedom to talk. But that was my role. So thank you again. Thank you again. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thanks.